Okay, let's get started. So hello everyone, welcome to this 3D Natives webinar on how to start and scale a 3D printing service. So my name is Carlotta, I work for 3D Natives as managing editor, and I'm also here with Mike, who's the CEO and founder of MakerOS. So as I was saying, but for anyone who's just joined, we have a short poll for you with two very simple questions that will just help us understand why you've decided to attend today. And so I'm going to leave it on for 1 or 2 more minutes, and then I'm going to share the results with everyone. I don't know if I can move the slide actually.
Use the arrow keys. There you go.
So actually, just to put into context why we're having this webinar. So as you know, if you follow our webinars that go on a monthly basis, last month, we discussed optimizing filament quality and handling procedures for material extrusion AM. So today we're taking a bit of a shift and talking about something different, how to start and scale a 3D printing service. So Mike, who's the CEO and founder of MakerOS, is going to tell you pretty much everything you need to consider before starting, but also some best practices for quoting and intaking new clients, how to manage and retain them over time, and other tips and tricks to have the best chance at success. So we're going to cover quite a bit, as Mike was saying. Grab a pen and take some notes, and then you're more than welcome to send in your questions as always in the Q&A tab, and we will come back to them at the end. We've allocated some time for this, so really don't hesitate to send your questions throughout. Just to put this topic in a bit more context, as you probably know, there's a growing adoption of 3D printing technologies in the manufacturing industry, which is really changing the manufacturing process in many sectors, whether that's aerospace, construction, medical, and most manufacturers are aware today of the benefits of the technology beyond rapid prototyping. So they are interested in investing in this technology. And sometimes it's not really possible to invest in in-house equipment. There's multiple barriers to entry, and that's a whole other discussion. But the main point is that a strong driver of the adoption of this technology has been 3D printing service providers. So we have a figure here from Research and Markets. They predicted that there would be a growth rate of about 28% from 2016 to 2022. You do have to take into account market shocks. I mean, the global health pandemic is definitely one, but the general idea is that this segment of AM is growing. There's a lot of opportunities ahead. And so it's definitely a subject that we wanted to cover in these webinar series. So Mike, I'm gonna let you take over, let you present yourself first of all, and also delve into the subject more deeply. So I'm gonna stop the remote control. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. How you doing, everybody? My name again is Mike Moceri. I'm the founder and CEO of MakerOS, and I kind of want to give you a little bit of context of, why the hell I'm even speaking to you today. Not just from the context that Carlotta was providing, but what makes me the expert. Why should you listen to me? I have founded multiple different 3D printing services and prototyping services. One in Chicago. It was the world's first retail service bureau. We had, EOS SLS machines and a whole bank of FDM machines. And it was kind of a hybrid model of retail and service, but the service was the real kind of the actual revenue generator of that business. And that was the scalable part. And then I co-founded another business out of Detroit, very similar model, but focused more on automotive, aerospace, and medical, and a lot of other, small startups and inventors looking to bring their products from the design, prototype, and production workflow. And involved in all of those services was not just additive. There were design, CNC services, and just general, engineering and product design and development. So when we approach the subject of how to start and scale a 3D printing service, I almost guarantee that anybody who's going to start any of those businesses will also have those ancillary services to that. And I'm no stranger to, handling clients from all of those. So I've bootstrapped, most of my businesses, from the very beginning, and I've gone to, obviously, getting venture capital in order to, bring MakerOS to market. I've been a mentor at the Stanley Black & Decker, focused in additive manufacturing. So when we're looking at this market, I have a very good understanding of who the players are, who the potential customers can be, since I basically serviced the entire line and spectrum of types of clients. So I've serviced students and their crazy Rhino models that are broken almost every time, to engineers who have extremely tight expectations of quality, to inventors in large corporations. So if anybody after this call has any sort of questions for me on how to run or to scale beyond what we're teaching today, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to have the conversation with you. So starting this off, before you start and buy a single machine, a single piece of software, the most appropriate thing for you to do if you're going to start a business, or if you have an existing service and you're looking to expand into a new market or into a new technology, you must first create a business thesis. So, some of these things you might want to do is really actually write this down. It actually helps to create a document and to ultimately create what is called an executive summary. And the executive summary, it should go over what your actual thesis is, just like the scientific method. What is your business thesis, and what is your actual goal with that? Are you looking to just support yourself to pay your bills? Are you looking to scale that business into something that's going to be very large? So you really need to understand, who you're even building this for. So if you, for example, maybe a thesis, could be like, if I am going to service the automotive supply chain in Detroit, I need to produce, metal additive manufacturing parts at an affordable price, at a faster turnaround than the local CNC shops, right? And then from there, that's not just enough from creating that thesis and writing out what that business plan might be. There's so much more involved into that. And really the next step is to really research, that market that you want to go after. So in that thesis, I mentioned additive metals, or it can be just additive plastics in Detroit, automotive supply chain. So what I mean by research is, if your thesis points out a specific market or a specific type of customer, you want to research on those customers. It sounds very basic, but you need to do basically a population analysis. And what that means is, if you have available to you some either government data on businesses registered within your local area that fit your profile, where in the United States, there's something called the NICS codes, which basically you can look up businesses with a specific registration code, or you can find it in association of manufacturers or engineers that might have, listings of these businesses. So there's many different ways to find population size. And you need to be able to make sure that you have a list of assumptions that you're going to ultimately be creating a financial model with. So if you have your population size, maybe you need to do some analysis on of that population size. What is the average purchase price, or what is the average contract value that these businesses go out and seek to buy things from? Because that is ultimately going to create what your market is, of what you can service. So when you're creating your assumptions, find out the population size, what is their spend, and doing things around, if it's not just local, how are you going to hit a broader market? So when we're talking about the financial model, this is really going to be looking at the list of assumptions to support the business thesis. So the financial model must support what your business model is, your thesis and executive summary, and it needs to pass what I call the sanity check of your assumptions or your research. For instance, if you're building out a financial model in Excel or something like that, It's not enough just to do, a 1-year projection month over month. You need to do basically a 5-year projection. And I know, some of you who are not used to creating financial models or projections, might be lost in doing this. And it's really just very simple linear math. You have your assumptions of population size, potential spend, and you need to include what your ramp up time is. So if you say that first month in business that I'm going to be doing, 10 grand worth of business right out the gate with one machine, do some sanity check of, okay, how much actual time do you have in a month? How much available machine time does that equal to realistically, given how many new projects that you can get in that month? Along that same line of thinking, you also want to make sure that you're not making more money in that financial model than exists in the market. And I've seen that a lot of times. So, being a startup mentor in this industry, a lot of times I'll see people coming with assumptions, and sometimes they'll say, by year 2, we're going to be doing $10 million worth of revenue, and we're going to have 60,000 customers. And I'll look at their business thesis in the market that they're going after, and they might be in some other small Midwestern town, and they might want to service the region, but there's not 60,000 customers, and there's not $10 million worth of market in that region. So you need to do yourself a sanity check to make sure that the math of your model supports the assumptions, and that the math and the assumptions support the business thesis. So that all needs to tell a succinct and very streamlined story from start to the end of the financial model. And what's up on the screen is, you want to create a financial forecast of at least 3 different varying scenarios. What that means is you want to create a worst case scenario, a middle case scenario, and a best case scenario, meaning how fast you ramp up in your sales, how much market you could potentially go after. And it'll at least give you just a high level view of how to look at your business and to potentially how to scale that. And having those 3 different scenarios just gives you a little bit of bit of perspective. And usually what I would do is plan for the worst case. Plan for the worst case of that model initially, and see how you're able to get it to middle case and then to best case. I'm a big proponent of contingency planning. I believe everybody should have emergency plans for anything, and you should also have emergency plans for your business. And that's no different in modeling that into the financial model. So what machines and services should you offer? This is also going to support the actual financial model itself. So in that financial model, you might have some different, revenue streams. And I would break this out, to be very understanding per machine. So you want to put in what the initial principal cost of that machine is, and then what is the potential revenue that you can gain from that machine in a given month over month scenario. And it's not going to be flatline. There will be variations, but you want to make sure if you're starting, even if you're an existing business and you're looking to spin up a new business unit, you will have a ramp up time. There's no such thing as opening up a business and immediately being, spiked up and getting a whole bunch of business, unless you have pending contracts, and that's the reason why you're starting the service. So when you're searching for different types of machines, make sure that whatever machine and the price point that those machines can be priced at for those services also fits within your financial model and also supports your assumptions, which ultimately supports your business thesis and your business plan. So what I would do is, month over month of your revenue line items when you're doing this, have machine 1, machine 2, so on and so forth. And then you also want to figure out, what type of services are you going to be offering to that population of the market that you want to serve. So what I mean by that is, my initial thesis originally, 5 minutes ago, I was basically saying Detroit is my local area that I want to serve, and automotive suppliers, plastic additive parts at a competitive and reasonable price, and I can do it faster than so on and so forth. So I'm stating who, what I'm offering, and the value proposition to them. So what machines would fit that thesis? That would basically mean, either FDM machines, if I'm going to be servicing the automotive market, since they like ABS, they like polycarbonate, they like nylon. So, maybe an FDM type machine or FFF machine would be appropriate for that. But if I'm servicing that market, I'm more than likely not going to be using the types of machines that are behind me that might need to be more of an industrial machine that can do either high temp materials or a heated chamber to keep dimensional accuracy, very tight. So make sure that the machines you're using fit for purpose, the customers that you need to serve in the quality that they expect. So by creating a huge print farm and buying a whole bunch of machines outright, I also don't recommend that. You should be ramping up your machine build out with the increase of business. So once each machine gets to a certain utilization, machine utilization rate is basically a percentage. So in a given month, how much time is going to be taken up on that machine. So my recommendation is, if the machine utilization rate on one of your machines starts approaching, 60 to 70%, it might be worthwhile to look at, purchasing another machine to help fill in those gaps, but also to offer maybe a different type of capability that you can also use as an upsell. So by creating differentiators within your business by the different machine types that you have, you could also upsell your clients from maybe, if I'm supporting my business thesis of Detroit and automotive suppliers, I might have initially an industrial grade or maybe a mid-range FDM machine with a heated chamber, but I might want to upsell them to maybe extremely accurate high density parts in ABS-like material. Then maybe I might want to go with an SLA machine, and maybe, for example, maybe a Formlabs type machine, something like that is able to offer the high accuracy, so that you can upsell from the FDM to the SLA type of services. Now, around that, I mentioned before, in starting all of these businesses that I have, I've always offered, engineering services, design, file fixing and cleanup, and so on and so forth. Now, I would highly encourage that as well, because you could also make a lot of margin on top of that. And I would include that in your financial model as well. So with all that being said, start doing some projections in that financial model here and saying, okay, how many customers could I potentially get and market to within my first 6 months or a year in a business as I start ramping up? What additional services could I add for that? And one thing you really want to make sure in building your financial, by the way, so if you say month over month, so let's say first 3 months you only have one machine, but let's say at month 4 in your financial model and it's showing you spike up even more, it's saying that you're gonna you want to make sure that you're not in your financial model taking in more work than that one machine can handle, because that's another sanity check in this whole thing, in the way of thinking. So if that's going to happen, make sure that you put into your assumptions that you're purchasing another machine once you reach that certain capacity level within that financial model as you're projecting out how to start your business. So I hope that helps to answer some of those earlier questions of, you create your business thesis, create that financial model, do your sanity checks, and then all the services and machines to support that as well. So another big question, a part of this, is what should you charge for your services? This has been, this is the question as old as time, basically. And basically every shop that I talk to, whether it's 3D printing, CNC, a lot of people, unfortunately, will look at their competitors and say, what are they charging? I'm just going to either undercut them, or I'm going to look at my costs and I'm going to just add a slap on a margin on top of that. That is a very bad way to price. I'll tell you that. And the reason why is that if you're not understanding either your underlying costs or your value, you're pricing wrong. And the best way to do this is to really figure out what your underlying costs are, and then to figure out what your true value is as a business, and to do a methodology called either value-based pricing or account-based pricing. If you're doing cost-based pricing, I would expect you're trying to commoditize your service, and basically those services tend to be more low value, but more high volume of printing. So if you're a big print shop and you just want to print parts, you don't want to deal with any sort of file cleanup or handle any sort of client relationships or whatever, that would be maybe more of an appropriate method because you can scale that way. But if you're a smaller shop and you're just starting, highly consider value-based pricing and account-based pricing. The difference between the two latter ones, value-based pricing, is looking at what is the value of the part I'm producing for the client beyond the part itself, meaning the actual relationship that I have with the client. How am I speaking to them? Am I solving their actual problems? Are we having a conversation about what types of material for their application? Am I providing other services with file cleanup? Am I the point person for that, and so on? And are you looking at the value calculation as something where if they were to go and produce this themselves, how much would it cost them? And what is your experience level as part of that? And seniority and experience have a lot to do with that in any service-based industry, where the experience, if you have more years under your belt, part of it is you could look at what your market rate would be at an hourly rate if you were to work at some other company, and consider that as part of your calculation. And then account-based pricing, the last method that I would recommend is basically looking at who the client is and basing pricing on what they could potentially afford. So it's a mixture of cost and value, and then adding potentially a higher margin on top of that. For instance, when I was starting my business out of Detroit, I was selling to a lot of automotive suppliers. So that allowed me to basically take a look at that business and price appropriately based on a business to business level, basically different pricing for different types of clients. And the pricing was proprietary and everything, but that allows you to modulate what your pricing is. And sometimes you're able to win larger jobs because of you're doing the account-based pricing. So with that, how do you price? How do you figure this out? What should you price at? Well, we actually created a calculator for that. So if I bring that up over here, so at MakerOS, we are huge advocates for the shops themselves. We want to teach them how to accurately price and to actually understand what their underlying costs are. So if you don't understand your costs, you don't understand your business. So I highly encourage you, and we'll have a link for this at the end to our website and how you can access this. It'll email you a code. And then we have some other YouTube videos in a webinar that explain how to price appropriately for FDM, FFF, and for SLA. And you can apply those same methodologies to MJF, SLS, and so on. They're longer videos. They're about a half hour each. But if you are confused on how to price, I highly, highly recommend you watch the whole thing because you'll learn a lot through it. I'm not going to go through the whole calculation right now because that's going to take too long, obviously. But more or less what this calculator does is it'll inform you what your costs are and what you could potentially mark up your services at. And in those videos, in that other webinar, it'll kind of have some more of those considerations on how to do value-based pricing. So all in all, the whole point of this exercise and what I'm telling you to use this calculator for is to basically go back to your financial model and use those as inputs. So use this calculator in your pricing methodology to your advantage to make a more informed financial model to see if this business or this venture is even going to work in the first place. So if you're thinking about buying a machine too, you could actually, it's really cool. You could basically project the ROI on that machine over time by using our calculator, by taking, how much revenue can I make with an entire unit of material? So like a kilogram of material, project that over time and say, okay, it might take me, a year to make up the cost of that machine. But if I price higher, it might be quicker to do so. And then if I'm making more margin on top of that, then I'll be able to purchase another machine and maybe scale my business or invest that in other areas of my business. So talked about a lot here. So I'm going to be going through real quick on what else do you need in order to get started or to scale. More so than just having the business thesis, the financial model, and the calculations for your costs, you need to start thinking about how you're even going to run this business. That's not just the business model, it's the operating model. So the operating model is what you want to kind of center your business around. And what I recommend is centering around the idea of good customer service and the customer experience. So every decision you make to run your business, ask yourself the question, is this good for the client? Is this good for my customers? So that means from your sales channels, how am I going to sell this? Am I going to build a website with Squarespace? Am I going to make it very user friendly? How am I going to intake jobs? God forbid you use a contact form on your website, because that's a turnoff for a lot of clients. And you definitely don't want to be taking jobs and notes down in not just an Excel sheet, because every time you bifurcate information, it creates the possibility of losing information and taking longer to get back to the client, and then it creates a headache for you. So usually whatever is good for the client, you also want to make sure that it's even feasible for you to handle that as part of your operating model. And how are you going to market yourself too? What is your branding presence? And in this day and age during COVID, you absolutely need to have a digital presence. Do not kid yourself in thinking that you do not need a website. And I highly recommend, if you are looking to start a business, you should have some cash available. And a lot of you might think, like, oh, I'm going to buy 5 machines, I'm going to start this business. Slow your roll a little bit before you buy those 5 machines, and maybe use the budget that you had for those 5. Start with a couple of machines, as I mentioned before, which is a good method to start scaling, and then maybe spend the other cash that you have on hand for your startup capital to build a website and to invest in systems that are going to help you attract more clients and to maintain those relationships. So make sure that all of those decisions are customer value and experience oriented, because I guarantee that if you win that, you will retain that client for life. Because if you're just a commoditized type of service, there is no loyalty to that type of experience. And there's no loyalty for bad customer experience. So I highly recommend, going on YouTube and, teach yourself how to be a salesperson a little bit. Us as, with engineering backgrounds and maybe not used to dealing with clients one-on-one sometimes, learning the talk and how to curate the relationships, what are different upsell techniques and what should your demeanor be. I've sadly seen, a lot of fabrication shops that are sometimes very callous, where they have this maybe a poor attitude of trying to outsmart their customers. You don't want to do that. Every customer should be a friend of yours. So talk to the customer as if it's your best friend, or somebody that you're trying to date, basically. So you're trying to win them over, and you're trying to treat them nicely so that you can develop this long-lasting relationship, instead of being very transactional. So if you think that your customer should only be very transactional, then I don't think that this is the right business for you to start. So make sure that you love your customers and your customers love you back. So how do you do all this? So this might be very overwhelming to hear, like, you got to put all this operating model together, you got to do all this pricing and everything else. Oh my God, there's so much that you got to do in order to get this going. Or if you're an existing business, scaling, that's a huge issue. That's a very hard problem to engineer yourself around as a business. So as I said, build out your operating model, invest in good software, create a good business presence, and invest in customer value and experience. And to segue, not to be, heavy-handed on the whole advertising and MakerOS here, but to be honest, if I had MakerOS back in 2013 when I started that business out of Chicago, I would have absolutely killed for this, for the reason that it consolidates all of the different problems that I had in running a business, and basically having to invest in a customer management system, a payment processing system, project manager. All the different softwares have been consolidated into one singular platform with MakerOS. So literally all you really need to start a 3D printing business in terms of your operating model to get to market is you need a machine. You need to understand your pricing and everything with that machine for your service. Get yourself a website, and then make sure you take a look at MakerOS. So what I'd like to do now is just kind of show a quick demo of the system so that you understand really how easy it is to get started, and to show you what an example of a business using this system looks like in a scalable type of operation as the one that I described earlier. So I'll go ahead in here. So with MakerOS, everything is project centric. A lot of people sometimes come to MakerOS and they think that they only need an auto quoter. That's because, you see, big service bureaus with these automatic quoting systems. But understand that you are not in the business of quoting. You're in the business of providing value and the service to your customers and completing the projects for them. So that is exactly why MakerOS takes a completely different approach than a lot of the other competing softwares out there, to be very project centric and very process oriented in a very organized way. So what you're seeing here is what we call the project board. And with the project board, it's like a Kanban board or like a Trello or Asana type system or Jira, where you're able to create your own processes in here or workflows. So in this workflow that I'm showing you here is what a business would look like if they're intaking projects, validating it, making sure that it's paid, going through production, quality control, and so on. And it's really easy, if I need to reorder any of these processes here, you can reorder them. Everything works in real time. So if it's not just yourself, and if you have a small team, or even if you have a large team, everything is working in real time on project updates and everything else within here. So what I'm going to go through here is kind of what does the inside of a project look like? Because one of the biggest things in dealing with clients, and probably I would say the most important thing in handling client relationships in customer service, is communication and making sure the client is updated. So this interface that you're seeing here, the client will also have a client portal. So the clients will have a login to see their projects that they either have created or that you have created for the client themselves. So they can see the different statuses of the project if it's being updated, any description, recent files, or invoices within the system. But at its core, the communication hub is huge. So within the communication hub, you basically have a real-time chat system that can replace the huge headache that you might have with emailing, a client, because that client might actually be part of an engineering group or product development group that might have 5 other people. So they might want to attach their colleagues to the communication within the project. And just like Slack, we have, general chat, team chat, which is private, and so on and so forth. So all the communication and all the files can be consolidated in one place. So you can upload any file type, by the way. So you can upload, private files. So if you slice a file, you can upload it to the project. So you can save your factory file, private Excel sheets, PDFs, whatever that may be relevant to the project. You can change different user permissions here. So for instance, if I want the client to have access to that, there we go. And if I want to view them, I can view basically any file type. So with MakerOS, one of the huge challenges that you're going to have as a startup starting your business, dealing with professional level clients, is being able to take in multiple different file types and being able to print from them in the first place. So for this example, I have a step file. We got 3MF files in here if you're doing color 3D printing, even full SolidWorks assemblies and doing exploded view, and being able to isolate and measure directly within the browser itself. So this type of value that you have here allows you to not have to invest in a software like SolidWorks or a Magix in order just to view these files and even convert them. Since if I go back into the Files tab here, I can take this step file and I can convert that directly into an STL or other file format. So it eliminates this layer of extra software that you need to purchase, but enables you to get into production faster for the client. So everything that I'm saying about how easy it is to use MakerOS, now imagine the scalability. If you were to have your website, and if you just had a contact form, imagine all that headache that that this solves that I just showed you, where you would have to go to your email, download that file, open it up in an expensive piece of software, either measure it, convert it, and then bring it into your slicer to do your time and materials calculation and so on. And in that vein of doing cost calculations for the client, clients can have access to the auto quoter, and you can actually turn this on or off for them. Because if you're a more professional and more of an account-based pricing shop, you might not want your clients to have access to this. So this can be private if you wanted to. So it's an easy toggle. But basically, for a project like this, I can very easily go in and we do this ABS. We might do this in gray. Standard density, and we have part sliders. So every option that you're seeing in here is customizable in MakerOS. So you can customize your entire pricing methodology, and we do pricing sessions with most of our clients to do all those sort of things. So there's a lot to this system. And I think you can understand from starting out, there's an overwhelming number of tasks that you have to accomplish and challenges as a business. But if you had something that you just get up and running for free for the first 30 days, test it out, see if it's going to work for you, build a simple Squarespace site so that within that first 30 days of your trial of Squarespace and 30 days trial with MakerOS, you can get up and running with a very viable and competitive additive manufacturing or engineering type of service. And by the way, you can see in here, you can offer, CNC services. You can use that for the quoter. You can even manually quote things, especially for, design services. So we have a full custom invoice creation system in here too. And you can take payments via credit card with this. Of course, you can take payments outside if you're international and things like that. So there's a lot to this system. And the main point I want to drive home here is, I'll cut the MakerOS advertisement for a second and just kind of get down to what do you really need, and what do you really want out of your business? Do you really want this to be a business that's going to be something that's approachable, friendly, and going to add a lot of value? You have to find software and services in an operating model that's going to do that. And I personally believe, again, if I were to, it's so tempting, by the way, for me, if I were to go and not do MakerOS for a second as the CEO, it's actually extremely tempting for me to start another 3D printing business because of the software that we have here, because it is so easy to get started. And obviously the margins with 3D printing can be very high and very worth your while. So with that, I hope you all took some good notes. I'm more than happy to carry on the conversation and get even more in the nitty gritty. If you want to get in contact with us and start your 30-day free trial of MakerOS, you just go to our website. On the top navigation, we have the link to the pricing calculator, which is free. And then when you start your 30-day trial, you're not going to be charged until the 31st day. So you can cancel anytime. So there's no obligation. And while you're up and running with the system, you can always contact us and let us know if you want a pricing session or if you just have any general questions about scaling your business or about how to start it in the first place. So Carlotta, I'll leave it to you if there's any questions, and happy to take any that others have.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you, first of all, for the presentation. I saw just a few comments about the recording again, and yes, this is being recorded and you can watch it back and you can get it in touch with us or MakerOS, and we'll put you in touch with MakerOS, of course, with any other questions. So even if we don't have time to go over everything in great detail, there's always a way to get in touch with MakerOS later on. So no worries about that. And the recording will be available on YouTube and 3D Natives. Just wanted to say that. And for the questions, actually, well, you said quite a few times that you wish you had this platform before, but do you have any other things that you would have liked to have known before starting a 3D printing business, or that was really the main thing missing?
Yeah, other than having MakerOS, again, like I said, I would have killed for it if I had it back in the day, because if I had this digital platform, I would have been able to compete directly against the larger online service bureaus at a much higher level, because the technology is more advanced and the general back-end organization is great. But more importantly, it provides an extremely great customer experience and an easy way for customers to interact with you and to submit jobs and requests for quotes and all that good stuff. Beyond having, if I were to go back in time and look at how I started these businesses, a lot of what I would have done is what I covered. I made the mistake in my first 3D printing service of not doing a better job of doing user research on the market. And, I bought a bunch of machines before I did the real financial projection of when should I actually buy a new machine. So you want to make sure, and I would tell myself, my younger self, don't spend too much on machines, and don't think that by building those machines that you're going to cut down your costs, because you're going to be investing a lot more of your time, but instead invest in other things that can increase the customer experience. So that means like brand presence, your website, and just general sales training too. how are you going to speak to them? What is your marketing and your branding going to look like? So those are very important things.
Great. And actually related to what you were saying, someone asked, would you advocate buying the machines or leasing them?
So some manufacturers have great leasing programs. I actually did that for some of the industrial machines that I owned in the past. And depending on the manufacturer, or the reseller, there are different leasing and financing models. So I would encourage you to seek those out if you're seeking a machine that's outside of your immediate budget. You just got to make sure that when you get into those contracts, look out for the materials contracts, because that's where they can sometimes get you. You want to make sure that the materials contract isn't so high that it becomes prohibitive to even running it as a service. Because sometimes these resellers or manufacturers are looking to sell directly to an internal service bureau for a large corporation to run their own internal prototyping. But of course, you just let your reseller, your manufacturer know, like, my intended purpose is to run this as a service bureau, which actually will change the dynamic of the conversation when you're negotiating those deals. So I would say if you have the cash to buy the machine, take a look at your overall budget. Make sure that you're not, wasting, even more than half of your budget on your machines to start. Make sure that you're, I think a good rule would be, potentially 30% if you're starting off, 30% of your budget on machines, another 30% on the customer experience, your website and branding and things like that. And the other, 40% basically on reserve, so that you can kind of get started, see how the business is going. And if you need to pivot, you'll have enough cash in order to buy a different machine or invest in different technology that's going to get you to the next objective.
And we have another question. So could you highlight some of the stars in the sector and what makes them extraordinary?
Some of the stars in the sector. I don't want to name some brands, to be honest, mainly because I don't want to put them on the spot. But I think the best brands are the ones that talk to their clients. The best brands are the ones that don't just have an auto quoting system. Auto quoting systems by themselves, I don't like them at all, because it doesn't actually provide much value to the client beyond just the tire kickers, what I call them. So a lot of the times, and a lot of customers will maybe come to you, give me a quote, because they're doing that to everybody. You don't want clients like that. You want the clients that are actually going to speak to you. So by having a system and customer experience where you're able to intake them and to actually speak with them and work with them on a project basis, you'll retain that conversation. So I would say any business that operates under that model, I think those are the true stars. And some of the bigger service bureaus do have those models, by the way. The bigger online ones, some of them do, if you are a larger company and if the client is worth their while in doing so. So that's what I'll say about that.
Okay. I have quite a specific one here. So I'm reading the question. I'm trying to make the jump from hobbyist working for another 3D printing firm to making a business off of what consumer printers I have and scaling out from there. Do you have any advice for how to make that kind of jump? Sorry, I don't know if that was clear.
Yeah, no, I understand that. How do you go from hobbyist to being a pro? Well, first and foremost, it takes a lot of time and dedication. And this is true with any other type of business venture, whether it's additive or if you're looking just to start a business in the first place. You need to take a real good cost-benefit analysis of what it's going to take for you as a person to either quit your job and to do this full-time professionally. Because this will not work if you do this part-time, because your clients don't work part-time. Your clients are working full-time in what they need from you, and you need to have all the time and attention on your business if this is actually going to work. And that could be a very scary thing when you're starting a startup, if you don't have enough cash to support yourself over a period of time, if this does not work out. So what I would say, and especially in this day and age during COVID, there's risk in leaving your job if you do have a job. So what I would say to that is, make sure you have enough cash reserve to start it, to expend the cash on the equipment and the customer experience. 60% of that budget, I mentioned machines and customer experience related things, but making sure that you have enough runway for yourself for at least 3 months to test this business idea out, because it'll maybe take you a month to get just ramped up, to get all the infrastructure up and for you to understand like how to operate the business. And then it will take you, month 2, month 3 to maybe start rolling in some clients. But you want to make sure that that's enough cash for you to carry the business forward. And then on top of that, making that leap, again, I'll say it again, we have seen businesses, hobbyists come onto MakerOS that have built a Squarespace site that have highly professionalized themselves, and they have gone from the hobbyist level to professionals. And the reason for that is because they're able to attract higher value clients to their service, because they can handle standard engineering type of files and converting them to STL, and they're able to basically own the customer relationship from the design phase. If you have design skills, this works extremely in your favor. If you have the design skills, you obviously have the prototyping machines, and then if you get the perfect client in this scenario, if you can do low volume production, you basically own that client from design, prototyping, production pipeline, the lifetime of the product. So if you, as a hobbyist, are looking to start this professionally, to make that jump, you need to have a lot of courage. You need to have some cash on hand, and you need to have a plan. So I highly recommend do this plan, all those steps that I laid out in this webinar. It'll help you greatly in understanding how to approach this. And do your research, and put every ounce of your energy into it. Every single day you got to push hard on it, and you got to want it more than anything in the world. As a founder myself, I've started multiple companies and bootstrapped them. It's very tough, but it's extremely rewarding if you're able to make it work. And I highly encourage anybody to give it a shot if their risk tolerance is there to do it, because the rewards can be immense at a financial level, but also at a personal level. Because I think we all can agree in this webinar, every single attendee thinks 3D printing and engineering is cool, because it is, because it's magic. And part of being a startup founder and going into that is because you should have the passion for the technology and for whatever it is that you do.
And by the way, we had about 30% that had no experience with 3D printing, and about 30 that had more than 5 years of experience with 3D printing. Great. So pretty cool. And I'm keeping track of the time, but actually we can go for the whole hour. So
let's bring on some more questions. I love it. This is a great conversation.
And so we have one actually going back to the calculator, and someone wants to know a little bit more about the methods, and just I guess we want to delve into the calculator a tiny bit more, and how you price the models.
So I highly recommend going to our YouTube channel, and we have some of those videos that specifically talk on SLA and FFF, and just some of the reasons behind why we created it in the first place. And we do explain in more depth the assumptions and some of the math in there. So if I were to go in the calculator right now, it would take a while to go through each of those assumptions. But we have these videos here and on our website. So if you go to makeros.com, on the top you go to pricing calculator. We do have the webinar down here, and it goes into it in a little bit more depth. So more or less the way that we approach the calculator, I just kind of summarize the overall methodology. We are measuring how long it takes to manufacture 1 unit of your material. So for instance, I'll do a super quick example here. So if my material cost is $40 a kilogram with my material density at 1.04 grams per cubic centimeter, and I'm going to figure out what the cost of the machine is. You enter all these parameters. So let's say 10,000 in here, and then the maintenance costs, so on and so forth. And what we're doing is we're going to figure out over the lifetime usage of the machine and however long it actually takes to fabricate that one unit of material. We're ultimately going to get what does it cost to fabricate that one unit, given all your other business costs, which should include your material, your machine, the actual fabrication time, and some of the assumptions there. The facility that you're going to be operating out of, your office or your home, you must include your home cost in there if you're doing a home office, and the human hours. If you don't have any employees, you must include yourself in that calculation as well. And then all the other software and services, which would include your website, any of the modeling software, anything else that you're using in support of your business should be going into this calculation. So then ultimately what we're going to do is figure out what is the actual hourly cost to run the machine. And then we're going to figure out what does it cost overall on average to produce that material. And again, with this calculator, what it's meant to do is figure out a baseline. And then with the MakerOS auto quoter, you can create different scenarios with these outputs for high quality, low quality, mid quality, in different geometry types. So this here basically gives you, if I put this margin to 0, this will tell me what the cost, the actual manufacturing cost is to produce that one unit of material, and what is the potential floor for pricing. So at the floor pricing at this level is 36 an hour. And again, these assumptions are for more of an industrial machine, so it's fairly high right here. So then in those videos, I go into the talk of value and what you're going to be providing beyond that. And do not be afraid of pricing higher than a lot of the other hobbyists or people out there. Don't try to compete on price, compete on service and quality. I am much more of a bigger advocate for that than anything else, especially for your market. So if you want to market in print miniatures for people, that side of the market is very price sensitive. But if you're doing engineering projects that those clients expect high quality and a high level of service, go up on your price because you're adding more value to it. And this is an experimental process here. So you're going to be iterating on top of this. And we help you walk through that too with MakerOS, our auto quoter, and just talking about general pricing methodologies and such. So that's how I would answer that one there.
Great. And actually I've seen this question, I think twice, but is the MakerOS based on a monthly fee, or is it something you purchase the software?
Yep. So it is an entirely cloud-based solution. MakerOS is hosted on our own servers. You don't have to build any sort of infrastructure. You don't have to install anything. It works off of like a subdomaining system, which basically means you register a unique URL with MakerOS, and that's your system. That's the portal in which you and your teammates will log into along with your clients. So for instance, here I got demo.makerOS. So if you're XYZ 3D printing service .makeros.com, that would be your unique URL. If you want to mask the URL, we do have further white labeling options for a more professional level of MakerOS, in the enterprise level, because that would be a separate deployment of that. But we have two main offerings. We have the professional, which is good to get you started. It has a lot of the basic features of the auto quoter. It comes with 2 seats, but the business tier is the one that I was showing off. The business tier allows you to take in all those different file types beyond STL and OBJ, with all the measuring capabilities and sectioning and all that. But it also comes with that Kanban board where you're able to create those unique workflows from, intaking of a project and tracking where it is, along with native QuickBooks integration if you use QuickBooks. And we also have an API. So if you use Octoprint, we do have an Octoprint plugin where you can basically go in and download your files from your MakerOS projects directly from Octoprint, which is pretty cool. But you could also use a system like Zapier and run automation. So Zapier is a software and service that takes in APIs or data from other systems, and then you can translate that and run automations on other services. So you could take the MakerOS API, put it through Zapier, and Zapier can put that data into Google Sheets, your CRM system, or any other sort of tracking system that you have. So you can create basically in a spreadsheet or within a Google sheet, tracking your jobs, get within a Gantt chart, burn down chart, whatever you want. That would all be custom in how you build it. So yeah, there's a lot to it on that side.
Okay, cool.
And yeah, it's just a monthly licensing fee to answer that. And basically the annual gives you 20% off. And the more seats that you add, the more you save. So if you slide the slider, if you're a university or a larger lab, the more you add, the more you save. So, I highly recommend you all, even just try out the business tier for the 30 days. And if you want to go down a tier, you can transfer out of the business if that's what you want to do. But I highly encourage you to test the higher level first to see what the power is. And then, you can have the conversation with us and our technical account manager on how to run the system and how to build out your processes throughout that.
Okay, great. We have time for one last question. Actually looking more at the marketing side of things. Someone asks, is it important to look into proper SEO, or how do you approach a new client? How do you interest them with 3D printing? Any marketing tips, basically?
Yep. So one thing that I will say about doing this business for as long as I have, people do not care if it's 3D printed. People care that it is made with quality and on time and at the price that they're willing to pay for. So I would not lean heavily in your marketing on the landing page of your website to focus too hard on the 3D printing aspect. You should mention it, and it should be optimized within your SEO in your local area. But the real value is, like I said, getting the parts with quality, faster than normal methods. And you can produce things that other methods can't produce. And if you have MakerOS on your system, by virtue of having a system that somebody can log into and to interact with you, that is a big value draw as well. So I would lean into more the customer value as opposed to just the technology that you're using. It's people do not buy what you do; they buy why you're doing it and the value that it brings to them as customers. So I would highly recommend, I love Squarespace. It's the easiest to use, Squarespace or Wix. I would even encourage you to hire somebody to do it. So as I mentioned, in terms of your budget, 30% machines, 30% customer experience, and the remainder on reserve cash to kind of test out the initial business thesis, and then wait until to grow that and so on. But yeah, I highly recommend it. I'll show you just kind of maybe a decent example too. So we have this demo site that we did build in Squarespace. So the reason why we have this demo here is to basically call out, create functional prototypes and short-run productions. So this is like an example thing that you can say to them. And then for SEO purposes, you very well could have, what's called the H1, which the SEO crawlers will pick up here. And then you want to have good calls to action. If you want to offer instant quoting, have a big button, instant quoting. And you should definitely have a link to the client portal. And both of those links can go to your MakerOS system. So having a flow like this for your landing page empirically works very well in conjunction with adding MakerOS to your service.
Great. I think that wraps it up. I've seen a few very specific questions. Again, you can reach out. So this conversation is not over, but I think we learned a lot. It was actually very educational. So thank you, Mike. Again, you will be able to watch this again on YouTube tomorrow. We'll post the replay, and then on Monday, you'll be able to access it on 3D Natives. I don't know if you have any last words. I don't want to cut off the webinar this way, but yeah.
Yeah, I think last words is, make sure you have a plan. Never go into any business venture without the plan to go in and the plan to get yourself out of it if it doesn't go well. Always have a contingency plan. The more you plan, the more you'll understand about your business and ask the hard questions about it. So when you do create your business thesis in your business plan, I think the most valuable thing to any startup is to go to your most cynical friend and ask them, how does this sound? And then they might give you a whole bunch of negative feedback, or hopefully it's constructive, so that it forces you to answer their questions to prove out your business thesis in the first place. And hopefully you did all the work of building the financial model, doing all of your research on the assumptions and everything else to back up your claims. So the harder questions that are asked to you forces you to give better answers and better planning. So I'd highly recommend, going to anybody that you perceive as a mentor or a friend who's going to be able to give you some of that type of feedback.
Great. Well, thank you. And also thank you to everyone who attended. We will see you on the next one in a month. So take care and bye-bye.
See you later. Thank you all. Appreciate it.